foremost, and always bless us with sincerity, truthfulness, and correctness in all of our actions and all of our sayings, inshallah, Allahumma ameen. Inshallah, continuing with the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. On Monday, we briefly discussed the situation of the Arabian Peninsula around the time that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam received the revelation. And we had mentioned the state of the Roman Empire and the Persian Empire and the state of affairs of the Arabian Peninsula and the Arab. And then we focused and zoomed in more towards Mecca and spoke about the political situation in Mecca a bit, or how specifically idol worship entered Mecca and became prominent in Mecca. And we mentioned that, just a quick recap, that Ibrahim alayhi salam, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed him with Ismail and then Ishaq, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered Ibrahim alayhi salam to take his son Ismail and his mother Hajar and place them in Mecca. And at that time, Mecca wasn't anything. There was no living being in Mecca. After the flood that took place at the time of Nuh alayhi salam, that entire area was wiped out and the Kaaba wasn't even there. The foundations of the Kaaba that the angels built were still there, and that's where Ibrahim alayhi salam elevated those foundations, him and Ismail. But there was, Mecca wasn't, no one lived in Mecca due to the hard situation in it. And Ismail resided in Mecca, and at the same time, around that same time, we said that there was a dam explosion that took place in Yemen, and where the Arab that were in Yemen started spreading throughout the Arabian Peninsula. Two tribes, the Aus and the Khazraj, went where? To Medina. And a tribe called Jurhum, they went to Mecca. Eventually Ismail married into Jurhum, and over time, Jurhum, after Ismail had passed away and years later, Jurhum overtook Mecca, and they started causing a lot of corruption in Mecca. When this took place, a tribe by the name of Khuza'a entered the scene, and they seen the corruption of Jurhum in Mecca, and they decided to attack Mecca and overtake Mecca from Jurhum. Why do we say this? Because two significant events are going to take place from this exchange in power of Mecca. Number one, Jurhum, before leaving Mecca, what did we say they did? They buried the well of Zamzam. When they lost and they were getting ready to exit Mecca, they didn't want to leave Mecca with the well of Zamzam for Khuza'a, the tribe Khuza'a. So they buried the well of Zamzam, and they buried the treasures of Mecca, and they left. With the leaving of Jurhum, the children of Ismail alayhi salam, the lineage of Ismail alayhi salam, left Mecca, and they resided on the outskirts of Mecca. They scattered in different places on the outskirts of Mecca. And Khuza'a took over Mecca. And we said idol worship was introduced to the Arabian Peninsula, and to Mecca specifically, by Amr ibn Luhay al-Khuza'i, a man from the tribe of Khuza'a. He introduced idol worship, and we said in the last khatir, with that, he captured the minds of the people of Mecca and the Arabian Peninsula. And that's what the hardest thing to lose is your intellect. That's the hardest thing to lose. It's a battle of intellect. Once you lose your intellect, then you can be guided anyway, and whoever stole that brain from you, whoever stole that intellect from you, can guide you however he or she or they will. Now today, inshallah, we want to focus more on the lineage of the Prophet ﷺ and how it relates to the seerah. The Prophet ﷺ, his lineage is Muhammad, the son of Abdullah, the son of Abdul Muttalib, the son of Hashim, the son of Abdul Manaf, the son of Qusay ibn Kilab. And the lineage of the Prophet ﷺ dates back all the way to Prophet Ismail alayhi salam. In today's khatira, we want to focus on arguably the second most important figure in the lineage of the Prophet ﷺ amongst the Arab. Amongst the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the second most famous Arab of that time period was whom? The fourth great grandfather of the Prophet ﷺ, Qusay ibn Kilab. Qusay ibn Kilab. His story is, he was amongst those that resided outside of Mecca after the Jurhum was expelled from Mecca and Khuza'a had overtaken Mecca. However, Qusay ibn Kilab, his father, he's originally Qurashi, he's originally from the lineage of Ismail alayhi salam. His father had died while Qusay was still very young. Therefore, his mother married another man, and then his mother wasn't from Quraysh. His mother decided to go back to her tribe, Qudaa, a very famous tribe in the Arabian Peninsula. And they're north of the Arabian Peninsula, towards, you could say, towards Jordan and so forth, contemporary. So his mother, after the death of her husband, she remarried and then her and her new husband decided to go back to their tribe because that tribe was a very prominent tribe as well. So she took her son, who was originally named Zayd. Qusay ibn Kilab, his original name was Zayd. She took him and she went to her tribe. His older brother, Zuhra, he had an older brother, so he was much older. He decided to stay with his family, with his father's lineage, on the outskirts of Mecca. And just for your information, Zuhra, his brother, Qusay's brother Zuhra, is the second great-grandfather of the Prophet's mother, Amina. Amina bint Wahb, she's from the tribe of Zuhra. It goes back to Zuhra, the brother of Qusay. So when Qusay went with his mother to her tribe, he was a foreigner over there. He wasn't from that tribe. You know, back then it was a very, very tribal society. Everything was tribal based. And he was with his father's tribe, originally from where? From Quraysh. So he was a foreigner and in Qudaa, in his mother's tribe. And therefore a lot of people kept kind of picking on him or telling him, you know, you're a stranger, you're not originally from here, and so forth, until as he grew up and he asked his mother, why, you know, what's going on? She told him, you're originally not from here. Rather, you're from Quraysh. You're from the tribes of Quraysh, which is actually a greater tribe in lineage and so forth than here. So when he grew up, he decided to go back to Mecca. He decided to go back to his original, you could say, his father's original birthplace. He decided to go back to Mecca. At this time, Mecca was under the control of whom? Khuza'ah. So he ended up marrying the daughter of the leader of Khuza'ah. He entered Mecca, he built some relationships, and he ended up marrying the daughter of the leader of Khuza'ah, Hulay ibn Hubshiyya, his daughter. And when the leader, Hulay, the leader of Khuza'ah, who was the leader of Mecca and the custodian of the Kaaba at that time, when he was passing away, there's two different stories. Some stories say that he actually gave the rights to the Kaaba and to Mecca to his daughter, who in return gave it to Qusay ibn Kilab. Other narration says no, he gave it to his son Abi Ghubshan. He gave it to his son. And an interesting story here, that when he gave it to his son became the leader of Mecca, and Qusay wanted to take back the reins and the leadership of Mecca to his lineage. So the story says that he actually bought, and pay attention to this, he actually bought the leadership of Mecca and the custodianship from the son of Hulayl for some alcohol, for a drink of alcohol. And the Arab till today, or till that period, they would refer, whenever somebody does a very bad business deal, they would say this is a worse business deal than the deal of Abi Ghubshan. That, you know, he sold the kingdom of Mecca and the custodianship of the Kaaba for mere alcohol. And keep this in mind to show you the significance of alcohol in the minds and the hearts of the Arab at that time. He was willing to sell power for a mere drink of alcohol. That's one narration that says he bought the power that way. Others say that his wife gave it to him after her father appointed her as the leader. Long story short, after he became the king and leader of Mecca, the tribe of Khuza'ah wasn't pleased with this. So they waged war against him. However, he reached out to his mother's side of the tribe, Qudaa, and asked them for support. And he had a brother from his mother, a half-brother, who came with an army as well from Qudaa and supported him. And eventually they were able to beat out Khuza'ah and expel Khuza'ah outside of Mecca. Once he did that, why did Qusay become, as I mentioned, the second most famous Arab and person from the lineage of the Prophet ﷺ? Because he is the one that brought Quraysh back into Mecca. After defeating Khuza'ah, he reached out to all of Quraysh, all of the tribes and families of Quraysh, and he started bringing them back to Mecca. And he actually built Mecca. So he rebuilt Mecca. He situated all the Qurayshiyyin, the Quraysh tribes, close to the Kaaba. He gave them houses close to the Kaaba to be the nearest to the Kaaba and so forth. And he was the first to do what? To start initiating laws in Mecca. He built the system of Mecca, laws, regulations within Mecca. And he became even more famous when they needed to cut down some trees to make space for homes, to build new homes in Mecca. People were afraid to cut down trees in Mecca. Why? Because it's a haram. It's near the Kaaba. They were afraid to do anything. So Qusay started cutting down the trees himself. And then once they seen Qusay cutting down the trees and no harm is happening to him, they started joining that. And then they started saying, whatever Qusay touches, barakah is upon it. And then all the people in Mecca and Quraysh, whenever they wanted to get married, whenever they were blessed with a child, whenever they wanted to initiate a business deal, they would go to whose home? To Qusay's home, to initiate it in his house, out of the barakah in their mind. They said, Qusay is someone that's blessed, and we want to gain this blessing. So when two people want to get married, they'll go to Qusay's house, and they want to get married in his house. When two people want to do a business deal, they'll go to Qusay's house, and they'll want to do the business deal in his house. That is when Qusay initiated Dar al-Nadwa. Has anybody heard of Dar al-Nadwa? The house, the parliament of Quraysh. When Qusay was receiving all these guests at his house, he said, no, I can't do this. So what he did is he initiated a room initially right across from the Kaaba, and he said, anybody that wants to get married and wants me to be there for the blessings and so forth, anybody wants to do a business deal, so forth, come to Dar al-Nadwa, so that they're not coming to his home. And with that, you could say the parliament of Quraysh began to take place. After he established Dar al-Nadwa, which is like the house of the parliament, he started bringing leaders from each family, the heads of each family, to include them in these decision-making procedures and policies and so forth. And with that, you could say the establishment of Mecca began to take place at the hands of the fourth great-grandfather of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and therefore he became the second most famous Arab at his time period. Why? Because he is the one that brought back Quraysh to Mecca. He is the one that built essentially Mecca and established Mecca, and he is the one that established Dar al-Nadwa in Mecca. He was so famous to the point that if you recall in the seerah, and we'll get to it inshallah much later, when the Prophet, and I'll finish with this, when the Prophet ﷺ, once Quraysh, the leadership of Quraysh, in the same Dar al-Nadwa that Qusay had built, they wanted to negotiate with the Prophet ﷺ. So all the leadership, Abu Jahl gathered all the leadership of Quraysh in Dar al-Nadwa and told them, go call Muhammad, tell him we want to speak to him, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So the Prophet ﷺ came with the intention thinking that they're going to believe, that they're going to finally, accept Islam and accept his prophethood. So when they came, long story, they started negotiating with him, we'll give you money, we'll give you, and so forth. One of the things that they said, they said, if you're truly a prophet, they said, you see, Mecca is very dry, and there's no crops, there's no plantation. Ask Allah to allow rivers to flourish throughout Mecca, to turn it into gardens, to turn it into trees and flowers and so forth. And then they asked for one thing. He said, and on top of that, ask Allah to bring back Qusay ibn Kilab to life. Qusay ibn Kilab. Ask him to resurrect him back to life. And if he comes back to life and he testifies that you are truly the Prophet of Allah, we will believe him. That is the status of Qusay ibn Kilab amongst Quraysh. That is the status of Qusay ibn Kilab amongst Quraysh. He was the one that when they wanted somebody to be resurrected and brought back to life, they said, bring back Qusay ibn Kilab. Ask Allah to bring back Qusay ibn Kilab to life. And if he says, yes, you are a prophet of Allah, then we will believe. Actually, one of them followed the Prophet ﷺ, said, you know what? If he says, I still won't believe. Right? So the stubbornness that they had in their mind. This is the story of the lineage of the Prophet ﷺ, starting with his fourth great-grandfather, Qusay ibn Kilab, who brought back Mecca to the hands of Quraysh and who established Dar al-Nadwa. Inshallah, in the future khatiras, we'll talk about the most famous Arab and the most famous of the Prophet's lineage in the next khatir or the one after that, inshallah. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad.